Recently, we've been working with area and perimeter, and today we're going to do a little spiral review by incorporating some decimal numbers as our base, our height, our length, and width, rather than just working with whole numbers. So let's start by reviewing what we've learned in the past about decimals. Let's first review how to add and subtract decimals, which both follow the same process. We learned that when we set up 12 and 8 tenths plus 4 and 74 hundredths, we do not set it up like this. What's wrong with this? Well, this is incorrect because the decimal points are not aligned. And if the decimal points are not aligned, it means that our place value is not aligned. So here we have 8 tenths and 4 hundredths on top of each other. This would be like putting 8 ones in line with 3 thousands. You're not going to get the right answer. The place value matters. So let's take a look at how we could correct this setup. We need to align the decimal points. Now my decimal points are aligned, which means that my place value is aligned. The 2 and the 4 are in a column. They're both in the ones place. The 8 and the 7 are in a column. They're both in the tenths place. But now this looks a little bit strange because the 4 is below nothing. But we know that we can put a 0 there because there's nothing is 0 and there's a 0 in the hundredths place. So I've put that there to make it easier to now add. And now I can do my addition. 4, 8 and 7 is 15, carry the 1, 7, 1. But now I'm still incorrect. If I end it here, my answer is 1,754. Obviously, that does not seem like a reasonable answer for 12 and 8 tenths plus 4 and 74 hundredths. What am I missing? Yes, I am missing the decimal point. Our decimal points stay aligned and the decimal point goes to the same place in the answer, 17 and 54 hundredths. Subtraction works exactly the same way. Now let's go on to reviewing how we multiply decimals. When multiplying 4 and 3 tenths by 8 and 25 hundredths, it's easier, just like with multi-digit whole number multiplication, to put the number with more digits up top. So I'm going to set it up like this. Now, this is set up correctly, even though the decimal points are not aligned. In multiplication, we don't need to align the decimal points. We're going to multiply 8 and 25 hundredths times 4 and 3 tenths, and we're going to completely ignore the decimal points to start. We'll multiply it just like we do with multi-digit whole number multiplication, and then we'll account for the decimal places at the end, and we'll review why we do that. So let's start by just multiplying. I'm going to multiply 8 and 25 hundredths times 3 first. 3 times 5 is 15, carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. 3 times 8 is 24. Next, just like multi-digit whole number multiplication, when I go to the next place value, I'm going to put a placeholder underneath the smallest place value. So I'm going to put a placeholder underneath the 5, and I'm going to now multiply 8 and 25 hundredths times 4 ones. 4 times 5 is 20, so I'll put a 0 underneath the 7 and carry the 2. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. We'll put the 0 under the 4 and carry the 1. 4 times 8 is 32, plus 1 is 33. And again, just like whole digit multiplication, we're going to now add them together. Okay, but we're not done. If I said this was my final answer, that would be 35,475. We have to account for place value. I multiplied 8 and 25 hundredths, which is a number to the hundredths place, times 4 and 3 tenths, which is a number to the tenths place. We were multiplying a hundredth times a tenth, which is going to give us an answer that goes to the thousandths. There will be 3 decimal places. I have 2 decimal places in the first factor, 1 decimal place in the second factor, so there will be 3 decimal places in my product. Let's review why that is. We looked at this in depth when we discovered how to multiply decimals last year, but just in case you forgot, let's see if this refreshes your memory. To clearly see why our product goes to the thousandths place, let's take a look at this problem in fraction form. we can read 8 and 25 hundredths as 825 hundredths. They're the same thing, right? So let's take a look at it that way. 825 hundredths times 4 and 3/10 is the same as 43 tenths. So we're writing it in improper form, but you're going to see now why the answer goes to thousandths. Now we're going to solve by multiplying our numerators and denominators, the same way that we solve all fraction multiplication problems. So if you take a look at the numerators, 825 and 43, it should look pretty similar. Over here we had 825 if we ignore the decimal point, and 43 when we ignore the decimal point, which is exactly what we did when we solved out the problem, right? So when we got 3, 5, 4, 7, 5, and we ignored the decimal, that would be the answer to the whole number problem, if it were whole numbers. So we don't have to redo that math. 825 times 43 is 35,475. But we still have to account for place value. We need to take a look at those denominators. 100 times 10 is 1,000. So if I were to read this product here, it's 35,475 thousandths. Well, once when we added the decimal point over here, what do we have? If I read this to the thousandths place, it is indeed 35,475 thousandths. So we learned a shortcut, which everyone applies and uses now, which is that if you count up the decimal places, 1, 2, 3, that's how many decimal places you have in your product. But this is the why behind it. Let's quickly go over perimeter. Perimeter is when we add up the distance around a figure. The formula for perimeter then is width plus length plus length. We add up the distance around the figure. Another way to say this, or another way to write the formula, is perimeter equals 2 times the width plus 2 times the length. That's going to come in handy as you're solving some problems later. Finally, let's review area. When finding an area, we are finding how many square units make up a figure. And the formula then is length times width. In this case, it would be 2 times 3, which equals 6, and the area would be written as 6 meters squared. We have 6 square meters. All right, now we're ready for some review problems. You can come back to this video anytime to review adding, subtracting, multiplying, perimeter, or area. We're going to review dividing decimals another day.